Welcome to Leading Voices by GSF. My name is Antoni Lacinai. I am your host of this program, and today I have with me Vice President of GSF, Mike Handcock. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Antoni. How are you doing?
I am good. How are you?
Fantastic, actually.
And we're sitting on more or less the opposite side of the planet, which is always interesting.
The top and the bottom, put it that way.
The top.
I'm at the bottom.
Okay, we can say that. Before we go into GSF that we will talk about, I know a couple of things about you. Of course, we've met before a number of times. You're the vice president of GSF, which means that next year you're president-elect and then you're the president and so on. You're also the founding member of VSAI. And do I have this right? You're the lifetime member of PSA in New Zealand as well.
Yep, lifetime member of PSA New Zealand and founding president of the Virtual Speakers Association International. Yep.
And for those of you who still don't really get that Virtual Speakers Associations, it's not about virtual speaking, is it? Just so we get that right.
No, it's an association that we put together to provide a home for countries around the world that weren't yet ready to join or create their own chapters. So they exist within the Virtual Speakers Association, but it's also a home for people who are speaking quite globally and virtually as well. So there's a number of people who have secondary memberships in VSAI along with their home association so that they can connect a little bit more globally. But we've got a lot of people in the Virtual Speakers Association who are from countries like Afghanistan or the Sudan or places like that, Argentina, so that, you know, at the moment don't have associations, and some of them would love to have associations. I believe just this week, and a huge congratulations to VSAI because they've brought now what is the Professional Speaking Association of Bangladesh underneath them, and they're doing this for other associations. So they're like the incubator, if you like, for new associations. So Bangladesh, we hope, will join the GSF at some stage in the future, but the VSAI are really nurturing them along at this stage.
It's actually a fantastic type of organization from that perspective, as you say, almost like an incubator. And this is also my second home when it comes to associations myself. What do you speak about when you have a chance to speak?
Well, I speak primarily to entrepreneurs about entrepreneurship. So that covers the whole A to Z of entrepreneurship. And when I'm working with corporates, I speak about conscious leadership. So corporates are about 20% of my business. Entrepreneurs are about 80% of my business.
All right. Okay, cool. And you're a global speaking fellow. What does that mean?
Well, a global speaking fellow to me is the pinnacle that you can attain in terms of being a speaker anywhere in the world. Why? Because you have to have your CSP to become a global speaking fellow. So therefore, you've already got your certified speaking professional, whether you exist in Australia, America, or whatever rules that you're operating under. So you've already attained that level, which means that you're in the top 7% of speakers globally. But it doesn't mean you speak globally. And I think that for me, and I know it's not for everybody, one of the beauties about speaking is that you can travel the world and you can work with audiences in Sweden or India or Mexico. And so a global speaking fellow has to have spoken in 3 of the 5 United Nations areas. Now that makes it very interesting because one of the areas includes Northern America and the whole of Europe. So that's actually in one area according to the United Nations. So that means that if you're somebody who's working in France and you're doing a lot of talks in around Northern Europe and then you do some in Canada and America, that's only one region. So you've still got to get 2 others to qualify. So you really are a global person. And for me, I find that really helps me with my brand. I've used it. A lot of global speaking fellows don't make most of it with their brand. I've really been able to do that. There's only just over 40 of us now. We might be 41 or 42 global speaking fellows. Since it was launched in 2013, I got mine in 2014, so 10 years now. So I think it's a real goal that speakers should have to get out there and experience the world. And of course, you can do that because if you've got an A-list customer, say like Microsoft, for instance, well, they operate in many countries around the world. So you should be able to leverage from Microsoft in Australia, for instance, if that's where you are, to Microsoft in France or England or somewhere else.
So which are the other two regions then that you talked about? If that's one, Europe and the US or the Americas?
Well, South America is a region, Africa is a region, Asia is a region, and the Pacific is a region.
All right, well, then I can tick off my boxes at least, which is good.
Yeah, well, you may be able to, and that's the thing, is that there's probably a lot of speakers out there who have spoken, and the idea is that you had to have given a certain number of talks, and you can't have just gone to Africa once and spoken there, and which I know you haven't, by the way. So I know you've been to Africa at least 2 or 3 times. So from that aspect, I mean, that would definitely be a tick box for you on applying for Global Speaking Fellow.
All right. Well, good to know. Then we all know about this. If you want to be a Global Speaking Fellow, you know about the criteria here. First CSP and then the regions. Let's go into GSF. You are now the vice president, which means that you were elected last year to be part of the leadership team, the presidential leadership team. Tell us why. Why did you put your name in the hat in the first place?
Well, there was probably 2 or 3 reasons, but there was 2 big ones, I think, is that I really wanted to make a difference and have impact on the direction of professional speaking on the planet. You know, having done 3,000 talks in more than 50 countries, what I've come to realize is that we still aren't seen as being as professional as an accountant or a solicitor. Yet I found myself talking to one of my staff yesterday and telling him what we do for people is far more important than what an accountant or solicitor does. Because, you know, they might save you a few dollars on tax or stop you getting into or out of a legal problem or something like that. But what we do is we change the direction of a person's vision. We change the way they think. We change the way they interact with the world. We change the way they interact with their families. So for me to be part of the presidential leadership team and to be able to have the impact to bring the profession up to a standard where it's seen as some of the other top professions, medical, accountancy, law being some of them around the planet, that's one of my big aims for our profession. I'm not saying it's going to happen during my presidency, but it's something that I'm going to be working on. So that was number 1. And number 2 is I work with entrepreneurs. Speakers are entrepreneurs. And Landi, my wife, and I happen to have, I think, 4 or 5 of the past Global Speakers Federation presidents as clients. And we've really helped them on their journey. So it just made sense to me. I go, why would, I learn all this much about the GSF? And I'd been on the board of the GSF since 2011. So why have I spent all this time on the board and been involved in this if I don't want to actually go the whole distance? And it never really talked to me until a couple of years ago. And then I thought, well, my career's sort of coming to the end rather than close. It's closer to the end than the beginning. This would be a really great thing to do for the industry. And I think I've got something to contribute because I've got a lot of experience and I think differently than a lot of people. So that's the reason why I want to be part of it. And I found it to be a fantastic experience. And I think that anybody who's thinking that they might want to take a leadership position in their association, that's the place to start. I mean, I was a board member of PSA New Zealand. I joined in 2005 and I was a board member in 2006. So I mean, that's 20 years I've been almost in a board member in some description at an association. You really learn a lot. You can contribute a lot and you really help a lot of people. And there's a great deal of satisfaction. And I find it fascinating when people say, oh, I don't have the time, because I always think, if you want to get something done, give it to the busiest person. They'll fit it in and get it done anyway. So
somehow
I really
that seemed to
encourage
work.
people to
Yeah,
do that.
I read it first time, I think, in Stephen Covey's book or something like that. If you want,
Yeah,
and
it probably
it
was.
makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah, you told us about your vision for GSF, also kind of raising the bar of the quality and the perception of us as a true profession and so on. During your own presidency, which will be happening in about 2 years, then, what is it that you really...
Little over a year, in fact.
Little over a year, even. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So 18 months or something like that. What is it that you would like to achieve during that time?
Well, I think there's probably three major things for me, and they're in no particular order. One is I want to encourage us, our associations, to partner more. I think we've got a lot of opportunity for people in our associations, the speakers, whether they be new or CSPs or global speaking fellows, it doesn't matter what, through partnership. So who am I talking about? I don't see why a company like Zoom shouldn't have a relationship through Global Speakers Federation with all the associations to provide high-level content that comes from accredited members and members of associations. I don't see why Slack shouldn't do it. I don't see, when I look at LinkedIn Learning, I look at a whole lot of people who are just subject matter experts, but they're not professional speakers, professional trainers. And that's what I'd love to see, partnerships at that sort of level start to happen. So I'm definitely going to start a mandate on that. Number two is that I really want to lift the bar in terms of education and the professional development within associations. So I want to bring some associations together to see how we can do that. Not to say that a professional speaker should be earning $100,000 a year or something like that. You can be a professional speaker as part of something you do. And that can be a very, very good part of something you do. There are some wonderful speakers out there that only give 10 or a dozen speeches a year, and they charge good money for them, and it's part of what they do. So I want to increase the education perspective of it. And then the third thing, of course, is I want to raise the bar for the industry and have the industry being seen as a more credible, and I say more credible because I'm not saying it's not credible, but as a more credible industry, a career for people that they can start coming into. I mean, you just go to your meeting in your own chapter and you'll find there's very few people under the age of 30 there in most chapters. So why aren't speakers starting to speak when they're 20 years old? Why aren't they starting to do that? There's a whole bunch of 20-year-old influencers on Instagram. Why aren't they professional speakers? In fact, I was on eSpeakers yesterday, Antoni, and I saw on there people like Boris Johnson listed on eSpeakers. I saw Westlife listed on eSpeakers. You know, I saw some DJs listed on eSpeakers, and I saw a bunch of people that are doing talks in their 20s that are involving entertainment on eSpeakers. So why can't we start to nurture and grow this so people actually want to come out of college and go into a career as a professional speaker? So they'd be the three things.
Well, you know, you have your work cut out for you.
Well, you got to start early, that's for sure. So some things are already underway, and you don't. Rome wasn't built in a day. But if I can sort of imprint the presidential leadership team with lifting the bar on some of those things, then I think I will have done a good job during my presidency. And for everybody that's listening to this call, I think will benefit.
Final question. When it comes to GSF and the associations, which are about 17 right now, what would you see are the mutual type of or expectations that we should have? What expectations should the associations have on Global Speakers Federation and vice versa?
Well, I think ethics is one thing and compliance is a second thing, so that any association can feel comfortable in the fact that they are part of a worldwide body, that there are some fundamentals that we expect from a worldwide perspective, regardless of where you are, and that if you join that association, and as an association, you are literally recruiting, training, and developing speakers. That's what you do. And so you can feel comfortable in recruiting and training and developing those speakers, knowing that those speakers are going to have the best opportunity to grow and develop in a world that's committed to improving the profession of speaking and thought leadership around the world. So compliance, Ethics would be one. Learning and development is a huge aspect. And of course, best practice and the connection between associations, which I know is one thing that you're incredibly passionate about, in the fact that we can learn from each other.
I absolutely am. I think there's so much we can do when we cross-pollinate each other and just use the collective intelligence that we have. This initiative in itself, Leading Voices, is one of them, where we can really learn from each other. Having spoken to a number of presidents and representatives so far, I can see some similarities that we all share when it comes to opportunities, challenges, but I can also see a number of things we do differently. And I think we can all learn from each other. So absolutely.
Yep.
Anything else you want to send out to the world now, everyone who's watching this when it's aired?
Well, I think two things. That if you're watching this and you're already representing your country on the GSF board, is to get more involved. You've all got incredible skills, and bring them to the board. We could use them. We can use your expertise. And then secondly is to go back to your country and let them know what's going on in other countries. Let them know what's going on globally. That would be fantastic. And to any speaker who's listening to this, all I want to say to you is to help build your own association and to give back in your own association. Whether you join the board and form a role, whether you help put on a convention, whether you help do a training day with young speakers, it doesn't matter what you do. But helping to grow and develop, introducing new potential speakers, that's just be a fantastic thing. You know, there are 90,000 speakers on LinkedIn. So there are 55,000 that are touched underneath the GSF rules, but there are only around 10,000 that are members of associations around the world. So therefore, there's a lot of people out there that if you're listening to this and you're part of an association, you're going down the professional development path, there's a lot of people out there that have a potential to try and undercut you, who don't have the expertise that you do and don't have the commitment to their industry that you do. So help build your industry.
I think that's an excellent way to end this conversation with that call to action. Thank you so much, Mike, for being part of this.
Thank you, Antoni.